So let's get into playing Set a Watch. The first thing you're going to do is look at the location currently sitting on your board. For the first round, you don't take these fire effects, but for each subsequent round after the first, you will gain and lose fire based on this, the upper left of the location card. The more important part of the card is this number here in the skull, which represents how many creatures you'll be facing at this location. Again, Set a Watch is played over the course of several rounds. There are 9 rounds in the game, and your goal is to successfully complete all 9 of them without exhausting your adventurers and losing to the darkness. You'll note that in the woods, we'll increase the health of all forest creatures by 1. So while we're in the woods, forest creatures are going to be a little bit stronger, but luckily we've chosen the Beastmaster as one of our party members, who's great at dealing with forest creatures. So we have 7 creatures here. We know we'll be facing 7. This card will go here, representing the current location we're at in camp. And then the first thing to do is all adventurers will roll their dice. And then based on these rolls, you can actually decide who goes to camp. So the cleric has doubles, which will allow him to take some additional actions. The Beastmaster has a decent roll. The wizard has a really bad roll, and the elf has very high numbers. So in general, the higher the numbers, the better. Those numbers will be used as direct attacks on creatures. So you want to keep people like the elf out there who have rolled 2 8s. I think based on this, a good decision would be to let the wizard rest, since he only rolled a 1 and 2 2s. So the wizard will rest in camp. When the wizard rests in camp, they'll refresh a card, they'll heal a card. These 3 cards represent your health. So if they're ever all flipped over to the gray side, that means your hero is completely exhausted. And if all the heroes enter that state, you lose. So the wizard's resting, he recovers a card, an exhausted ability card. So he's now fully functional for next round. And I'm actually going to show you some of the actions you can take in camp. So the actions you can take in camp, it's sort of a light worker placement, dice placement part of the game, where the resting player will decide what actions to take. They can place a die on their character card to take their camp ability if they'd like. If they have doubles, they can choose 2 of the 3 spells on the back of the location cards. Those spells are Vanquish, Seal, and Bolster. Bolster allows players to reroll their dice. Vanquish gets rid of creatures in the horde, so that may be a good thing to do since I know that last horde creature is an Unhallowed, and I could remove him permanently from the game. And then finally there's Seal. If the Unhallowed deck to the right of the board here, showing the Unhallowed, is ever empty, we lose the game, and all the evil Unhallowed have been resurrected by the Acolytes. So later on in the game, it may become imperative to take an Unhallowed from the graveyard and put it back into that Unhallowed deck to make sure it doesn't run out. So that's another spell that we can take. Finally, if we have rolled exactly a 6, which I haven't, I'd be able to heal another party member. If I had rolled a 4 or better, I could check the map, which is looking at the top card here and the top card of the unused location deck and choosing which location we'll go to next. I can use sequentially larger dice to scout ahead, which looks at the top 2 cards of the creature deck and allows me to rearrange them in any order I'd like. And finally, well, not finally, there's Equip. You'll notice that I do have my other ability cards off to the side. If I take the Equip action, I can swap one of my abilities out for another ability, so I can customize my character to my playstyle. And then finally, you can always spend dice up to 3 times to chop wood. Every time you chop wood, you get 2 more fire, which is going to help you see more creatures in the line. So I'm going to do a variety of activities and just sort of get into them so you can see them. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to teleport, which lets me draw the top 4 cards of the unused location deck. And I can look at Frost Caverns, Mountain Keep, that's a tough one, Lost Outpost is tough, and Remote Tavern. Well, Remote Tavern only has 5 creatures and I lose no firewood, and the person resting in camp heals an additional card. So that's a great location, and even though I don't know what the top location is, I'm going to decide that we're going to teleport our party there next round instead. So I'll put that card on top, and I'll put the rest of these cards on the bottom of the unused location deck. For my next action, I'm going to scout ahead. I'm going to look at the 2 top creatures of the creature line, and this eagle will be stronger in the dark woods because he's a forest creature, but our Beastmaster can handle him. And then more importantly, the Acolyte is not a great creature. It has a reveal ability and a first position power, which lets him reshuffle a summon card back into the draw deck if there is one in the graveyard. There's not right now, so these creatures aren't terribly bad to be at the top, so I'm actually going to let the eagle come out first and do the Acolyte second and return them to the top of the creature deck. Finally, for my final camp action, I'm going to chop firewood and increase the firewood by 2 from 7 to 9. After the resting player has taken all of their camp actions, the next order of business is to actually set up the creature line and enter combat. So typically we say that the person resting should handle the creature deck. And what you'll do is you'll place out cards equal to the number in the location card, which is 7. You'll place 7 monsters on their way into camp. Now, the final step before combat begins is for each to reveal the creatures in order based on the fire level. So currently we can see 2 creatures with the brightness of our fire burning that brightly. So we'll reveal the first 2 creatures, which we know are an eagle and a forest creature. Now, believe it or not, we're actually almost finished, all the rules in this game. A lot of the complexity of this game comes in with mastering the abilities of characters and using them together with other characters in your party for powerful combos, and manipulating this creature line, which we sometimes refer to as a line puzzle, to make sure that you can defeat everything in the line. So if you don't mind, I'm going to take a chance to push this up a little bit to get a little more stuff on camera, so you can see more things. So you can see the line a little bit more. Can't see everything, but see a little bit more of it. And I'm going to talk about the 2 ways to use your dice when you're in combat. So the first thing you can do is if you're a ranged character, such as the Elf Ranger, you can hit anything in first or second position. If you're a melee character, which we don't have any in this example, but if you were playing the dwarf or the rogue, they can only hit the first position. So they have to use abilities or other things to affect more things in line, which makes them a little harder to utilize and more challenging to use. So the Elf Ranger could assign this 8 dice just as a direct attack to the Acolyte. The Acolyte's health is in the upper right. And the damage it does if it were to not be defeated in line is in the upper left. So this is the amount of cards it would exhaust if it were to enter the camp. And this is the amount of health that it needs to be assigned to it before it's destroyed and sent to the graveyard. So an 8 is greater than a 7. I could use 1 dice to kill the Acolyte at range with the Elf. We could also combine dice. So if we wanted to hit something exactly, I could assign this 1 and the Cleric could assign the 6, equaling 7 exactly, and that would also kill the Acolyte. But it would use up 2 dice, and dice are pretty valuable because the other thing dice can do are they can be used to activate any of your abilities. So, for example, I could use my long shot ability, which reads defeat any unrevealed creature card. So I could use this 1 to activate my long shot ability, and I'm actually going to do this. To flip over and instantly kill the zombie horde. So the zombie horde would go to the graveyard, and we would fill in the line, all the cards would move forward as we would attempt to defeat the line puzzle. So we have 6 cards left to defeat, and however many dice we have left. Now I could use long shot again. You can always exhaust a card, which is basically like taking a hit preemptively to use it again. So just for the sake of this example, I'm going to exhaust long shot, meaning that the elf now is down 2 cards and probably should rest next turn. But we're going to the remote tavern, and the elf would heal back 2 spots anyway. And I'm going to use it again to long shot this card. And look at that. That is just an amazing use of my dice and my card. I've killed one of the strongest standard creatures in the game. The Ember Drake has been defeated and goes to the graveyard. I'm going to actually do something that's not really the best tactically, but it'll let you see some of the examples of how things work in the game. I'm going to use the Beastmaster character is based around taming forest creatures and saving those cards for future rounds. So if I use the Tame Beast ability, I can tame a revealed forest creature, and then I can use this creature card as an attack die worth its value. Normally that would be 4, but we're in the Dark Woods, so it's actually a 5. So I'm going to spend my 3 dice on Tame Beast and just take this eagle and add it to my Tamed Beast horde of the Beastmaster. The Beastmaster can only ever have 2 tamed creatures at one time, but she can save them between rounds, which is very, very useful. Now, the Acolyte's going to move to first position. I actually forgot to go over her reveal ability, which is when she's revealed, you draw a card from the creature deck and you add it to the horde. So every time an Acolyte appears, she's going to make the final round of the game much harder. Finally, when the Acolyte moves to first position, we would reshuffle a summon card, if there was one, in the discard back into the creature deck. But because we're not worried about that right now and there are no summon cards in the discard, that first position power isn't a big deal. Then we'll move up the rest of the card and reveal some more. Now, if the Fae gets to first position, we're going to lose 1 firewood, which is not great, but not terrible. So ideally, if we could take it out with some dice, we should. So the Beastmaster is going to use a 6 to kill that Fae. And we use these spots up here in the upper right of the player board to represent where you spent your dice. So any dice spent, placed on my board, I know I've used up. So I know the Beastmaster only has the 5 left to use. And again, I'm sort of showing you a solo example where I'm playing all the characters, but the whole idea of this game is that it's very collaborative in nature. It's capturing that feel of Dungeons & Dragons and playing Dungeons & Dragons cooperatively together and having that collaborative combat feel. So we only have 1 card left, and just to show you some more abilities and things, we will do Curse. So I can assign this 4 at range from the Cleric. So we have a 4 here, and then the Ranger will deal 8, which would overkill the skeleton, but then I can show you guys the Sharpshooter ability of the Elf, which is once per round I can reuse and re-roll a die spent on a direct attack. So since I spent this 8 to directly kill the skeletons, I can re-roll this dice and I still have a 3 left. That dice isn't spent yet. Now the reason I killed the skeletons is because the skeletons go, if they end up on the top of the graveyard at the end of the round, they're actually added to the line of the next round. So that's not something I wanted to have happen, so I took care of them. We have another Fae, and we have plenty of dice to deal with this. So, you know, we'll use a 6 here and an 8 here, and we have these dice remaining, and we've killed all the creatures in the round. And once that's finished, everyone takes their dice back, and you re-roll for the next round. And that's how you play Set a Watch. It's not too complicated. Hopefully that gives you an idea of the basics. Obviously, there are a lot of player abilities and things like that and combos that you can work on. I will do one more round of the game in another video just to give you another look at basic gameplay and combat.